A little bit, we're still paying attention, I promise, so. All right.
Yeah.
Are we back on the record?
Yes, we are.
Housekeeping?
I'm not the record person.
Okay. We're back on the record, and you were sworn in earlier, so if you could state your name on the record, please.
Marilyn Chandler Ford.
Dr. Ford, I want to ask you, we're going to cover something in the dismissal letter dealing with the leave time this part, but I want to ask you a quick question before we get into that. From your perspective, as the director of the corrections division, and a long-term employee, obviously, of that organization, would you feel that a captain licking the back of the head of a subordinate would be an unusual occurrence?
Yes,
And is that something that you feel should be documented?
absolutely.
And I know I asked you this in the previous case, but I want to get this on the record as well with regards to Captain Hunter. There have been allegations that she regularly does things that are inappropriate in the workplace. I'm not talking about licking. That was not something that has been testified to as having been a regular occurrence, but you know, that she uses bad language and a lot of horseplay in the workplace, and so therefore the actions that were alleged to have occurred on August 4th were not significant to Mr. Schneider and Sergeant West, and that's why it wasn't reported. So I want to know from your perspective, you have worked with her for the length of time that she's been at the corrections department, whether or not you ever witnessed anything like that yourself or had anything like that reported to you at any time during your career out there, because obviously you've risen up through the ranks.
No, I've not personally witnessed any of that type of conduct, and the only thing I have been made aware of is she was rumored to be dating a subordinate, at which time twice I confronted her with that and with the other parties, and in both instances was assured by all parties that it was nothing more than a professional working relationship that was friendly, but there was nothing else.
And whether or not something was formally reported or written down with regards to Captain Hunter or anybody else in your command for that matter, if you heard even by rumor that Captain Hunter had done some of the things that she was alleged to have done in this case, including the, flatulating on people and getting wet willies, would you have done something about it? Would you try to look into that, even if it was a rumor?
Yes, but both of the other instances came to me via, a rumor, I heard that.
Okay.
So yes, I would have checked into it.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be formally reported to you for an allegation of misconduct to be investigated or looked into at your level?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. I want to direct your attention now to the time frame of January 27th, 2013, and this is with regards to Sergeant West. At some point, did you become aware that he had called out of work on January 27th?
Yes.
And do you remember what you were told about why he was, whether he was injured? Do you know why he called out of work?
Yes, we have a form called the Supervisor's Documentation of Employee Callouts, and this would have been Sunday. I would have found out Monday at work. And I was surprised because I had seen him Saturday at a retirement picnic for one of the captains that was going away, and the then assistant director. And so I was concerned to hear about that. And the documentation, so he called out Sunday for work on Monday, and it said he has a doctor's appointment and he may also be out 1/29 the following day, which would have been Tuesday.
Okay, so he calls on Sunday, speaks to someone on duty,
Lieutenant Luciano.
and says, I'm gonna be out for a doctor's appointment and I may be out on Tuesday as well.
That's correct.
Okay. With respect to that, with him calling out, did you subsequently receive some type of a physician's note that gave you that he was supposed to be off of work for some period of time?
Yes, when he reported back from duty, he should have supplied a doctor's excuse. Actually, we ended up getting it from his attorney. And it turns out he didn't go see the doctor until Thursday, January 31st, which was 2 to 3 days after he had told his supervisor that he has a doctor's appointment and he also may be out on Tuesday the 29th.
So for clarification, what would his normal duty days be that week? If he worked, he was supposed to work Monday, Tuesday?
He would have worked Monday, Tuesday, off Wednesday, Thursday, work Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Okay, so he calls on Sunday, says he's gonna be off Monday and maybe Tuesday.
He's off Monday. He calls back on Monday and says, I'm going to be out on Tuesday. Then he's off Wednesday, he's off Thursday. Thursday's when he goes to the doctor. And the doctor puts him out, backdate, from Monday the 28th through to the following Tuesday, February 5th.
So you get eventually you get a note that takes him out of work. It's a note that's dated the 31st from the doctor saying, excuse him from work from the 28th until the 5th.
That's correct.
Okay. Did you find that was unusual or suspicious, or what was the concern for you in that, with that scenario of the call-outs and the saying he's going to the doctor and that kind of thing?
Well, first of all, his report to the supervisor at the point that he called out sick, I have a doctor's appointment, but he doesn't go until several days later. That's deceptive in terms of the initial call out for Monday and then for Tuesday, because he still hasn't gone to the doctor by then. Then when he gets put out through the following week, he actually, so he would have worked Monday, Tuesday, off Wednesday, Thursday, work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so the note covers that. Then the following work week would have been Monday, February 4th, he would have been off. Tuesday, February 5th, he would have been off, and then his next 2 duty days would be Wednesday, Thursday. So every other week you work Monday, Tuesday, and the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then the next week you work Thursday, Friday. Well, the relevance of that is February 5th, he normally would have been off. The doctor's note put him out through that, but he shows up for overtime in training, and he goes to the range and qualifies at the range and also does pepper ball launcher training, which is quite active. So, while he has a doctor's excuse putting him out, he's showing up at work.
What was your understanding of or did you have an understanding of what part of his body was injured that he was off for that week of the 28th?
His back.
His back, okay. Did any of the information that you received from the doctor indicate whether or not he was on any medications or anything?
Not at the time of,
Okay. And so he comes back when he's scheduled to be off, but he comes back for this training on February the 5th. And can you tell us what is pepper ball launcher training?
pepper ball launcher, it is a less than lethal weapon. It is pellets, almost like a little paintball full of chemical agent. They're shot of a weapon, and it involves both classroom portion as well as they went on the rec yard and physically, you know, they did teams where they have to, you know, move fast and move in formation, and so it's quite active.
Okay. And so you have a note that from his doctor that he's supposed to be out of work because of this back condition through the 5th, or to the 5th?
Yes,
Okay, but then he comes back on the 5th and does this physical activity.
that's correct.
Okay. I want to, may I direct your attention to some documentation from the pepper ball training and ask if you can identify what that is.
Yes, this is the form for chemical agent exposure that everybody in the class had to sign, and it lists a series of things that alerts the officer that the training involves active chemical agent they're going to be exposed to, that they need to be aware of conditions that could be aggravated during the exposure, and it talks about certain medical conditions or procedures, or even just medical issues they may have that could be impacted by exposure to the chemical agent.
And could you, is that form there signed by Sergeant West on February the 5th?
Yes, it is.
And could you tell the board what the last part of that form certifies, his signature certifies?
The last item says, 18, any condition for which you presently take medication, please explain.
And what does the certification say?
It says, I certify that I have received the above information and I am not currently suffering from these or any condition that would prevent me from participating in this training.
I'm gonna admit that into evidence before we're done, so let me correct that so I don't forget. Dr. Ford, looking again at the letter of termination, if you go down to that next paragraph where you're talking about, or where the letter speaks about a call out to Lieutenant Smith, can you please explain to the board what that is about?
Okay, so after he was out on Monday, Tuesday, he would have been off Wednesday, Thursday, regular duty. He would have been expected in Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And so Friday would have been February 1st. The day before, he calls the scheduler, the person that makes up the rosters, and says that he won't be in for the entire weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and that the reason he was going to be out, because typically the people receiving the call, and it should be a supervisor, will ask, what's the nature of the problem. He said it was unrelated to his previous leave earlier that week. Then Lieutenant Smith advised him to pick up the FML paperwork, Family Medical Leave Act paperwork, and to bring it back on his next scheduled work date. So being off the first, second, and third, his next scheduled regular date would have been February 6th, Wednesday.
And did he return any FMLA paperwork as directed by Lieutenant Smith? On his next workday, sorry.
No, he didn't. According to the FML paperwork, which actually is submitted directly to personnel and not through our division, he picked it up from our division on February 4th, but it was not submitted, it was received in personnel, I believe it was in April.
Do you have a copy of the termination letter with, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Yeah,
I did.
okay. I want to just ask you, with regards to page 4, where there's a directive or a general post order, that says promptly comply with and execute direct orders or instructions given by a superior officer and shall not refuse to comply or execute such orders or instructions when the orders are lawful and proper. Was it your opinion that failure to return the FMLA paperwork in a timely manner as being directed by a lieutenant was a violation of that post order?
Yes, that was one of them.
And any other of those violations on the letter that you feel were violated by?
Well, the other one, in terms of contacting Lieutenant Smith, as I said, Lieutenant Smith was the scheduler. He was not the shift commander. So he was not the supervisor that should have received the call when Sergeant West could not report for duty. The previous call-outs had been to the shift commanders, so he obviously knew how to follow that policy. That's who he should have called when he was calling out, even for multiple days with a doctor's excuse.
So that would have been, that's a general directive that they're required to call the shift commander if you're gonna call in sick. You don't
Yes.
just call the scheduler, you have to notify the shift commander.
That's correct,
And that's something he would have known after working there for 14 years.
yes.
That's all I have.
You read the rec? Recall.
Okay, so it sounds like we've got a lot of administrative things going on here as far as the absenteeism. Is that or the policy related to being out of work?
I'm not sure what you mean by administrative things.
Well, so in the course of this, we're dealing with an internal affairs investigation. So we have these other things that have tagged along here. We've got this FMLA paperwork, not sure about what days he was absent and requesting that time off. Is that more an administrative issue?
No, I think it goes to the same issue. Discrepant statements, and we can't be clear as to what he's telling us, and he changes his story.
Sergeant West's personnel file reflects that he's not had any letters of reprimand since 2009.
I don't have it in front of me, so I don't
Okay.
know, but let me look at the letter here. That would be correct, since August 2009.
This copy of his personnel file and actually.
You mean his evaluation is what
But
you're
yes, I'm
referring
sorry,
to?
yes, oh, yes. His personnel file, right, doesn't have any letters of reprimand more recently than 2009.
According to the notice of dismissal, this is a evaluation form, this is not a personnel file.
Correct, my next question is gonna be about the evaluation. Okay, so, since 2009, we've had no letters of reprimand or other corrective disciplinary actions.
Well, there's been nothing in terms of discipline according to the merit rules, which would be the oral reprimand, written reprimand and up. There may have been corrective actions which would take the form of counseling. That would be noted in the supervisor's notebook, and that would go into the annual performance evaluation.
Okay, so, and because I've seen them in some of these personnel files, absenteeism shows up in the personnel files. So that, if that had been an issue in the past, at any point in time, perceivably, it would be in the personnel file.
If it reaches a certain level, yes.
Okay, so then to the evaluation that I put there for you, that's the most recent evaluation for Sergeant Hunter. In the, I'm sorry, Sergeant West, in the dependability box, Sergeant West is consistently on time and has no unscheduled absences. He is capable of working without supervision and making good decisions that are within the scope of his position. He is never late for work, and he is always ready to help others and staff and inmates. So that's a pretty good glowing evaluation concerning his attendance at work.
For the period that's indicated, June 2011 to 12, yes it is.
Okay. To your knowledge, and based upon the documents of the personnel file and the evaluations, has absenteeism been a relatively recent issue at all?
No.
Okay.
He has a long-standing record, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 prior actions for absenteeism.
Is that dated 2000 and prior to 2006?
Yes, it is.
Roughly 7 years ago, 6, 7 years ago. Is it your understanding that prior to the back injury, so that's on the 26th, right after the picnic is the softball game, that's when the back injury happens. Prior to that week prior, Sergeant West was actually out of work for the flu.
I brought some notes. He was out of work. I don't know the reason.
So, if it was because he was out with the flu the week before, so he's got an excused absence, say, for the flu, right? We don't have any issues with the week prior, the absences in the week prior.
Well, one of them was unexcused, late notice. I'm looking at January 18th. He called out on a Friday, unexcused. It was not pre-scheduled. I
Okay,
think that's the way to say it.
it's not pre-scheduled. Okay, so he's got this one absence, and then he's back for a day or two, as I understand it, on duty. Then we have a back injury on the 26th. And anywhere in your notes or to your knowledge, were you made aware that he actually went to the emergency room on the 26th for this back injury?
I subsequently learned that, yes.
Okay, so the supervisor's report, that you read on that Monday,
That did not include that information, no.
does not include that information.
And it states it in the present tense that he has a doctor's appointment. It doesn't say he had a doctor's appointment.
Right, at that time, he had gone to the emergency room, and then was having a subsequent follow-up actual doctor's appointment. So that's a little bit of the difference, and what I'm trying to point out too is in regards to when, as far as the FMLA, I think there was some language about that this leave was not the same as the prior leave. Do you remember that?
Well, I have an email from Lieutenant Smith about that, but it was the continuing absence that led Lieutenant Smith to notify him he needs to pick up FML paperwork because it appears that he has, some medical condition.
Right, and I think that, and Sergeant West was not attempting to get, FMLA coverage because what he was indicating they were not the same leave. He had been out for the flu, he had come back, injury, different leave. Two separate leaves.
Well, no, Lieutenant Smith, his note, and I asked him about this, when he talks with Sergeant West on January 31st, which is a Thursday, and Sergeant West is calling out for the weekend, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, he references the immediate Monday and Tuesday, which would have been January 28th and 29th. The flu was even prior to that. And according to our work with personnel, after 3 days of continuous absence, we need to alert the person to pick up FML paperwork.
Okay. Was the FMLA policy, is that longstanding or is that relatively new?
I'm sorry,
Is-
what exactly, the county has had FML policy for as long as it's been federal law.
I'm sorry, I'll clarify. The requirement to pick up the paperwork if you're out more than 3 days. Is that a long-standing policy?
I think at least a year or longer, I can't say, specifically, our personnel person would handle that within the division.
A year from today or a year from when that occurred?
I'm saying about a year, I don't know exactly when, but it's been our procedure that when somebody has been out 3 or more days, that we would make them aware they need to file FML paperwork.
That's all.
Just real quick clarification. You talked earlier, you asked about the absenteeism. You do have a policy, don't you, that if a person's out for a certain number of absences unexcused, then that's when they might get a write-up. Is that right?
That's correct.
And in this case, that wasn't the issue. It wasn't that he was out to the point where he was gonna get a write-up for being absent. The point was it had something to do with explanations and the timing and is that, am I understanding
That's
that?
correct. It was not about excessive absenteeism. It was about discrepant statements and telling a supervisor one thing. When you say I'm calling out because I'm going to the doctor and you don't go for 2 or 3 days, one has to question the legitimacy of the absence that you're calling out for.
And with regards to the FML paperwork, the point of that was that Lieutenant Smith directed him to turn it back in when he came back to work. And he did not do that.
That's correct.
Okay, that's all.
Any questions from the board?
Only one.
Yes, sir.
Is there the FMLA, is that right?
Yes.
Is there a timetable between when you receive it and when you return it?
It's actually contained, personnel might be better to answer that, but yes, You're supposed to submit it as soon as possible when you're aware of things, and in fact, the law even speaks to if you knew that you had some sort of medical need, that you should try and do it ahead of time. But it talks about doing it in a timely fashion.
Even, my point is that even though it's received in April, is there a penalty for that? If that's the time that it was received, or is it just, well, we received it? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Right. I don't think, it's never been the division's practice, nor do I think it's the county's practice to penalize somebody for what is provided by law, FML. But it does create a management issue when you're trying to document absences and run operations when somebody says, oh, I have submitted it to the doctor, I've got this absence, it should be coded this way, you've got payroll issues, and you've got just coverage issues, determining, have you strayed into an area where you're now in excessive absenteeism, or is it absenteeism that is covered by FML? So it's more of a management type of issue, and that would be our concern when we tell somebody, pick up the paperwork, get it in, so that we don't have those type of questions.
That's one small follow-up. The FMLA paperwork, once it's picked up by the employee, it actually is completed, or some portion of it, and it goes to the doctor's office.
That's correct.
So there is some waiting or reliance upon the doctor's office to complete the paperwork. Then you get it back, then you send it to personnel. Sort of.
Yes, actually, some doctors will send it straight to personnel. I don't know whether it goes back through the employee or.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Call Director Rector, please.
We meet again. You were sworn in earlier, would you state your name one more time?
Sure, George Rechtenwald.
Thank you.
Mr. Reckenwald, for purposes of this record, could you tell us where you're employed and how long you've been employed with Volusia County?
County of Volusia, 16 years,
Present position
Director of Public Protection,
and previous positions with Volusia County management level.
Director of Public Works, Interim Director of the Ocean Center, also the Director of Roads and Bridges.
Are you responsible for disciplinary action for the employees that are in the Department of Public Protection?
Yes.
I want to direct your attention, once again, to the internal investigation of Captain Nina Hunter. At some point, were you made aware that during that investigation, there was some issue with one of the witnesses, that being Sergeant West?
Yes.
Do you remember Captain Vanis bringing this problem or this issue to your attention?
Yes, I do.
And can you tell us, what did Captain Vanis tell you about West's testimony, or Robert West's testimony?
Well, he said that he'd received a phone call from Sergeant West changing his story, and that he had a lot of concern about that, obviously.
If you can, I would like for you to try to express to the board the significance of this changing testimony in this investigation.
Well, again, we have an ongoing investigation regarding the actions of a high-ranking management person in the correctional facility jail. And there were two major witnesses, Mr. Schneider and Sergeant West. So we take these things very seriously. The assertion was made that she acted inappropriately, and as I stated earlier, the jail is it's very important to have order. It's very important to have tough environment. And when someone's called into question like that, we take it very seriously. So we had two major witnesses, and in this case, Mr. Sergeant West, and now, after 2 times under oath, took it upon himself to call us and tell us and change his story.
And, did you later, what direction did you give Captain Vance when he called you on February 1st?
Well, I said you need to go initiate an IA so that you can talk to Sergeant West to find out what's going on, why the change in the story.
And did you also direct Captain Vance to prepare a document or to not prepare, but to document his conversations with Sergeant
Yes.
West on February the 1st?
Yes.
Why did you ask him to do that?
Because it was significant that he had called us, and, you know, we needed to document that conversation. He initiated that with us. You know, we're going along, and we've got an investigation, and we've got 2 witnesses that say something's happened out there, and like I say, you know, then he initiates that call with us. So he effectively, at that point, now we have no witnesses who've now kept a straight story, you know, in this investigation.
And were you aware at that point that Captain Hunter had been interviewed as well, and she had denied doing these things?
Yes.
And you talked a few minutes ago about the seriousness of the investigation and the allegations. Was that in part because they were of the nature of sexual harassment?
Yeah, I felt there was that potential. It was definitely, you know, improper behavior whenever you have someone, I think, using a bodily, you know, tongue, bodily fluid, you know, and it gets to you know, places it on somebody else, and be kissing someone else or doing something, anything that's unwanted like that in a physical nature.
Does the county have a policy about sexual harassment?
Yes, they do.
And does the county also require every employee to sign a form that they understand what sexual harassment is?
Yes.
Does that form also require all employees to report such allegations if they become aware of them?
I don't have the form in front of me, and I believe it's, from my memory, I believe it does.
And are you aware if that is signed annually? In other words, every year the employees get that, all employees get it, so they can be reminded of the seriousness of sexual harassment allegations.
Yes, I believe it's attached to their evaluation of this.
And isn't it true that actually Mr. Sella couched his complaint in the form of that he felt sexually harassed by Captain Hunter?
That's true.
After Captain Vanis notified you and then an internal investigation, at the conclusion, after Captain Vanis had re-interviewed Sergeant West, did he ultimately brief you about the entire investigation of Sergeant West and the statements that he had given under oath and the evidence in that case?
Yes.
Did he provide you with a report of investigation about the investigation of Sergeant West?
Yes.
And did you review that?
Yes.
Did you also review the actual sworn statements of Sergeant West?
Yes.
And if you could please, and I'd like to provide another one of my little sheets with the page numbers and stuff. I'm not gonna ask you page numbers, but just to make sure, you know, your recollection at this point of the day is clear. Yeah, please. What was your understanding, or what was, as to the, what West had done that was deserving of punishment in this case?
He had testified 2 times, very firmly, that yes, she had licked Sella in the back of the neck. And then he then, of course, calls and changes that testimony, at least with Captain Vance. He not only calls about it, but then when Dave, you know, goes over there, he offers it up again, unsolicited. So now we have a record of it. I mean, there's no getting around that. I mean, he's an sworn officer, and his statement's been made, it's there now. And then, of course, he comes back in after the order of, you know, the IA, and then he goes back again, that she did it.
Okay.
So we have 4 contacts and 3 in 1.
And did he, in fact, with regards to whether or not Captain Hunter gave Solo a wet willy, was the evidence that you reviewed that he initially said he didn't see that under oath, then he told Captain Vanis that is what he saw, and finally said in his last sworn statement that he did not see the wet willy.
That's right, the wet willy.
Okay. Was it significant to you, in some respects, that Mr. West was a supervisor or sergeant in the organization?
Yes, it was.
And what about the fact that he had not reported, according to the evidence that you had, that he had not reported?
It was disturbing.
Did it make, when you're looking at giving us, knowingly giving a false statement to a supervisor, was there a difference between the fact that he was under oath for part of them and then told, when he spoke with Captain Vanis, that he wasn't under oath? Or is that still a violation because he's talking to a supervisor?
It's correct. We have a lot of actions in county government that are not necessarily under a sworn statement. We still expect everything to be true.
After you reviewed the evidence that was gathered in this internal investigation and reviewed the statements yourself, not just the report of investigation, did you concur with Captain Vanis's conclusion that West had violated certain merit rules and policies?
Yes,
And in your capacity as the director, if you didn't agree with Captain Vanis, you didn't have to sustain those violations, correct?
that's correct.
The final decision as to what violations are sustained is yours, correct?
Correct.
Okay, okay. In this case, you agreed with Captain Vanis's conclusion. Did you also agree with the testimony of Director Ford as to the violation of with regards to the sick leave and things?
Yes,
Okay. In considering the appropriate discipline in this case, did you look at Sergeant West's work history and his evaluations and things of that nature?
absolutely.
Did you take that into account?
Yes, it was definitely taken into account.
Tell us why you felt that termination was, which is obviously a very harsh penalty.
It's the same,
Go ahead.
I feel that veracity, truthfulness in this setting is critical. And I think it only gets more critical when you're, in charge. So as a sergeant in a correctional institution, where they're under the care, we're taking care of people, they're incarcerated, we hold their lives, so to speak, in our hand. It is absolutely important, critical nature. And on top of that, as I think stated previously, we also need to understand that the occurrences in a jail setting where I think things occur and truthfulness is of the utmost importance is at a very high rate, because you're in there, maybe 2 or 3 guards, and then they have 10, 20, inmates. You're always going to be in a situation where they could, 4 to 5 of them could say one thing, and it's your word. So their word has to be above reproach. They have to be consistently honest. It's critical as we move forward. We have things that happen in the jail, like I said before. We sometimes have to use force. It's not something we want to do. They avoid doing it, they're trained, but when they do it, we have, often there's an incident report that comes out of that. We have to be sure that everyone's telling the truth. These things often end up in court, they end up in hearings. We have to, know that our people are telling the truth.
You heard some, in the opening, Ms. Thompson talked about that Mr. West felt intimidated because Captain Hunter was his supervisor in his chain of command. What's your thought about that? I mean, in terms of the requirement to report and to do what's required in their job?
I believe, obviously it's a difficult thing to do that, to, I guess, report on your supervisor, but I think it's pretty clear they have a duty to do it. I feel, we have a process in county government. He's afforded all protections. If he's to bring something forth of a negative nature, we will deal with it, and we were dealing with it. See, in this case, that was the point. We were in an active investigation
You're talking about a hunter.
of hunting.
Because Sella had reported that.
That's right.
A line level officer had reported.
Right, and again, this person, Sergeant West was a witness, and he was a witness to what happened. And as far as, I was concerned, I mean, he, was a good, strong witness, and everything indicated that he was telling the truth.
So, with regards to Captain Hunter's internal investigation, why not just sustain the allegations against her based on the testimony of Sergeant West? She denied it, he said it happened under oath. Why not just sustain those allegations and take action against her?
Because now we have neither witness, both of them now have changed their story in the middle of the story. So, knowing that they were gonna have to testify, we knew that, that was gonna be called in question,
So are you saying that if Captain Hunter had received adverse action, if you had sustained these allegations against her and she had received adverse action, then you would have expected the fact that Sergeant West and Mr. Schneider changed their testimony during the course of the investigation would be brought out by?
We would be here, and that would be the people who were defending Captain Hunter would be pointing that out, for sure.
Was Captain Hunter disciplined for anything in that internal investigation?
Yes, she was.
So you were able to sustain some action against her, is that correct?
That's correct.
With regards to the note, did you ultimately issue a notice of intent to terminate Sergeant West?
Yes, I did.
And did you give him an opportunity to meet with you to provide?
Yes, I did.
And did he have counsel with him when you met with
Yes,
him?
he did.
Did he tell you anything in that meeting that changed your mind about terminating him?
No, he did not. I mean, he was very upset that, of course, we were at this situation, and certainly had a lot of empathy for that, but he didn't provide any fact or anything that, could explain to me why, he would take it upon himself to go ahead and change the story.
Did he ever dispute to you in that meeting or any other time what Captain Manis said about what happened on February 1st?
No, he did not.
Did he say, look, he's lying about that? I didn't say that to him.
Never said that.
Have you personally ever terminated employees in the Department of Public Protection for lying?
Yes, I have.
And do you feel that the penalty in this case is consistent with others of like kind?
It is.
I have nothing further.
It sounds like, in the answers that you just provided, that Sergeant Ben West is received punishment in anticipation of litigation. Your exact statement was, we would be here and the other side would be tearing them apart, things to that effect.
He's not receiving punishment for litigation. The discipline is because he changed his story. He changed sworn testimony.
In regards to Captain Hunter's IA, which has been on your, which was, you previously just provided testimony about, the substance of Officer Sella's complaint is both broad in nature and then a specific incident of the August 4th event. But it is very broad in nature also. Would you agree?
There's some elements that are broad, yes.
It talks about an ongoing pattern of behavior, pattern of conduct, pattern of language, heavy flirtation, sexual conversations that no one in this room would say aloud.
That's correct.
Okay. And in regards to that investigation, there were exactly 5 people interviewed.
I think there were 5 people interviewed by Captain Davis, but I would have to again check, I don't have an exact amount.
Captain Hunter, exactly 5 people were interviewed.
Okay,
Would you agree that more than 5 people have regular contact with Captain Hunter and would be able to provide to the county perhaps relevant information regarding the claims made by Officer Zella?
it could be, I believe we actually asked Dr. Ford, Director Ford, if there was anybody else out there to interview, if she had heard anything, or there was anywhere else, anyone else to interview.
So out of those 5, you have 3 who, out of the 5, only 3 were specifically asked about the pattern of conduct, the language, the sexual contact, all the sexual nature that Captain Hunter regularly brings to the workforce. Only 3 of those were specifically asked that question. Would you disagree with that?
I can sit here and read these and answer that, if you would like me to do that.
Okay, well, I'll tell you that that's what you'll find, that exactly 3. And not a single one of those people are still employed today at the jail. Does that signify anything?
It depends on the behavior.
Okay. And, given what was, the information that was garnered during that investigation, the end result is that Captain Hunter, I think, received a 5-day suspension.
Something of that nature.
That sounds about right. And yet, so you have 3 sworn officers giving testimony who, let's just for a moment, take away this issue of the licking incident. But all 3 of them, in colorful detail, tell the same tale about the type of environment that exists around Captain Hunter. And she, in her sworn testimony, says absolutely not. I would never speak that way. Would you consider her testimony to be untruthful in that light?
The problem is that the 3 people that you're talking about, 2 of them changed their story significantly, and I think the other left the county on his own to take employment somewhere else. I mean, it is very frustrating for me because I am the one, I'm trying to determine what happened out there, and because of their action, I could not determine that, and that is incredibly frustrating for me, and very serious matter. If everyone had told the truth from the beginning, then we would have known what really happened. But to this day, it is a muddled issue because of these actions.
Roughly how many officers are on duty at any given time in jail? Can we guesstimate?
It might be 80. I don't know. That you'd have to ask Dr. Ford here.
But this very important investigation, we have only put 5 people under oath to find out what you are describing as a very important matter, because veracity and truthfulness is very important. Sounds like an incomplete investigation at best.
I disagree, because the facts were surrounding the incident that was brought up by Sella, and that's what we focused on.
And again, more than just one incident was brought up as part of that complaint.
There were some generalities about her overall language.
You've stated, and I believe that you believe this, that veracity of the truth is important. Of course it is. The meeting that was brought up, at which I was present, I remember the question being posed to Sergeant West. Essentially, why wouldn't anybody else report this? If this is going on, if this is how Captain Hunter acts, why isn't anybody reporting it? Do you remember his answer?
I don't remember his answer.
If I tell you what his answer was, and if you recall, will you let me know if it
Yes.
sounds vaguely familiar?
Yes.
The setup in the room, Dr. Ford was present in the room. And you will agree that at the jail, Dr. Ford is top, that's her
She's the
ship.
director.
Right. As evidence of Sergeant Ben West's brutal honesty, he answers that question and actually looks down the table and says, everybody just says that Captain Hunter's Dr. Ford's Golden Girl. That's why. I mean, when Ben is telling you, why isn't anybody reporting this? And he is brutally honest and says, well, because my supervisor, his supervisors just kind of say, that's Dr. Ford's Golden Girl. That's just the way it is. And he said that in front of Dr. Ford. Do you remember that answer?
I vaguely remember it, yes.
I remember sitting in the room and being impressed by that level of honesty. That's all I have.
Just real quick, sir. Well, do you figure when someone comes in to meet with you and they've been given a notice of intent to terminate, that they know they need to do whatever it takes to try to change your mind at that point? It's their last chance, right?
Yeah, I believe that.
So just because Ben West said that everybody says Dr. Ford's the Golden Girl and that's why things are reported, that doesn't make it true, does it?
No, that's correct. It does not necessarily make it true.
And have you heard that since you've been supervising Dr. Ford, have you heard that she's some kind of Golden Girl? Is she-
No, I have not heard that until that comment.
Have you seen any evidence of that? I mean, do you treat her like that? Do you hold her to a lesser standard than your other directors because she's some kind of a Golden Girl?
Dr. Ford?
Yeah.
No. Now, Dr. Ford, I've seen no evidence that she has any favoritism. In fact, I think she has been very disappointed about the actions that we eventually did, take against her, of the actions of Captain Hunter.
Mhm.